Alright, so today I'm going to be making funnel cake and elephant ears. And the funnel cake and elephant ear batter ingredients are really simple, but the technique can be a little bit fickly. It can be a little bit challenging to actually pour and fry up the funnel cake properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what the ingredients are in my batter first, and then I'm going to tell you a few techniques before we get started. So in here I have 1 3/4 cup of milk, 2 eggs, about a teaspoon of vanilla, and then in here I have 2 1/2 cups of flour, a 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of baking powder. So I've just beaten this egg, milk, vanilla mixture lightly, and I'm going to go ahead and add in the dry ingredients. I'm going to go ahead and give these a mix. And the first tip is getting a good consistency. You want the consistency of pretty much a pancake batter. You don't want it to be too thick or too thin. If it's too thick, it won't cook all the way through. At least it'll get burned on the outside before it cooks all the way through. If it's too thin, when you pour it in, it'll just break up into little pieces and you'll have little burnt bits all over your frying pan oil. So the first step is getting a good consistency. Now this is a good base. Sometimes you have to add a little bit of extra milk to thin it out, which I might have to do, but I'm going to keep stirring. Another part of the technique is the temperature of the oil. This oil needs to be a little hotter than normal. It's going to be frying at 375, and it's going to be frying for about 1 to 2 minutes on each side. The importance of the oil being hot is so that the batter cooks all the way through, and so it gets enough of a golden crisp on the outside like you want. And then another part of the technique is the pouring. The pouring is the hardest part. A lot of people buy pourers that are specifically made for funnel cakes. I don't have that, but I've done this a few times and I've just gotten used to using one of my big measuring cups. I'm going to put a little bit of the batter in here at a time and pour it gently with that. Also, the way you pour is important. You don't want to pour too thick and you don't want to pour too thin. Again, if you pour too thin of a strip when you're pouring in there, the batter will just kind of break apart in the hot oil really quick, and again you'll get burnt bits. If you pour it too thick, it won't cook all the way through. If you pour it unevenly, like some thick, some thin strips, you'll have some that are cooked all the way through, and then some that aren't, or some that are burnt, and then some that are cooked all the way through. So the recipe is easy, the technique is what is a little challenging. And I've heard a few people have used just pancake batter, just buying boxed pancake mix and making a batter. That might work out good. I have never tried that before. I just like to use this recipe because it's a genuine funnel cake elephant ear batter recipe, and it tastes exactly like the type you get at the fair. So I just don't mess with it, and I just keep it simple and use just the ingredients from scratch, and it makes a really nice cake. So right now, my batter, it's hard to tell, but I'm going to try to show you the consistency. It's like that. It's falling a little too slow, so I'm going to have to add a little bit more milk. So you could need anywhere between 1 3/4 to 2 cups of milk for this recipe. So I'm going to grab a little bit more. Probably just add about a tablespoon and then see what that gives me. I'm trying to think if I remembered all of the technique tips. So the consistency of the batter, frying temp. Also, for frying certain things, like different things like fried pickles, fried mozzarella sticks, even fried chicken, it's not super important that you have a thermometer and it's exact. If you've fried stuff before and you know what your oil looks like and sizzles like when it's up to the right temperature, then for stuff like that, a thermometer isn't really necessary. But for stuff like this, especially frying doughs and frying batters, it is, in my opinion, or in making caramels, it's important to get a thermometer, because this needs it to be at a very particular temperature in order for it to fry properly, in order for it to become the golden brown on the outside and a little bit crispy, and for it to cook through fully. So it's a technical process, but once you get it down, you can do it pretty easily, and it doesn't take, you know, much effort at all after you've done it a few times. The first time I tried this is a whole lot of batter, and I had to go through pretty much the whole batter before I got the technique right. So if you don't get it right the first couple pours, just keep trying. Use those tips. Hopefully they help. All right. So the batter is almost there. I'm going to add maybe 1 more teaspoon, and we should be all good. Yeah, that should be good. So 1 3/4 cups, you know, plus or minus a couple teaspoons or a couple tablespoons. You'll just kind of have to feel it out. And again, it should be the consistency of about pancake batter. That's looking really good. I might just add, I'm gonna be fickle. I'm just gonna add like a 1/2 teaspoon more, just to make myself feel a little bit better. Know that it's thin enough, because you definitely don't want it too thick. But again, definitely don't want it too thin, so it's a process. But it comes together quick once you've done it a few times. And again, this recipe, this is a really good one. It is a genuine recipe, and it tastes just like what you get at the fair. So that is a perfect consistency. It is not super soupy. It's got some a little bit of density to it, but not too much, and it's definitely not too thick. Okay, so I'm gonna let that rest. You want to let this rest, set up, and it's going to thicken up just a little bit for about 10 minutes. I'm going to turn my oil on and let that come up to temperature while the batter's resting. Alright, so my oil's up to temperature. I poured some of my batter into this pourer. It thickened up, so I just stirred it a little bit, poured it in here, and now I'm going to pour it into the oil that's at 375. And again, I'm going to try to pour it evenly, not too thick, not too thin. Alright. That looks good. So it's just going to, like I said, it's going to cook for about a minute or 2 on each side. You want it to become a golden brown, and you'll start to see it getting golden brown coming towards the top. The one thing I would recommend is don't take it out too soon, because it's really easy to undercook a funnel cake or an elephant ear. So you want to let it go. I would recommend at least a minute on each side, probably closer to at least 1:30. Thermometer. And then once it starts to bubble on top, kind of like when you make pancakes, it'll start to kind of form little bubbles on the top as it's getting there. And don't be afraid of letting it go. If it's starting to look a little golden brown, it's not going to burn too quick or anything. But you need to let it get there so it cooks all the way through, and it's not going to burn. So I'm just going to let that keep going for another few seconds. And then I'm going to try to flip it. That's another difficult part. Especially because, like, usually when you make a funnel cake, it always usually ends up becoming like the size of your entire pan because the batter is so thin, it just kind of goes where it wants and it spreads out. So flipping it can be a little difficult, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Alright, cool. I'm going to let that go for probably just another minute, maybe a minute and a half, but this is what it looks like. Ah. The lighting's bad, but this is what she looks like. Looks pretty good. It's a nice golden brown color. And then it's not super pretty, but they don't all, you know, mine don't always come out pretty, but they always taste pretty good. So again, I poured it, even though it doesn't really look like it, I poured it pretty evenly, making sure it's cooking all the way through. And I will toss probably one in the cinnamon sugar to make an elephant ear, and sprinkle a little powdered sugar over the other one. Excuse me. And then once they're done, I will show you guys what they look like and give them a try. Alright, so I just tried my funnel cakes and they came out perfect. Like I said, they're not always pretty, but they're not supposed to be. But they are cooked all the way through. They are crisp on the outside and they are beautiful. And this, I don't know if you can tell, is the inside and then the crispiness. And that's good. I'll set that aside. So this is my elephant ear. Just coat it in sugar cinnamon. And this is my beautiful traditional funnel cake. And yeah, it's just, it's too good. I'm gonna try to show a good picture of the inside. Yeah, that's the stuff. I gotta have a little bite of this one too. Like I said, trying to get some light in the kitchen. Now it's all in my face. Okay. So yeah, this it's the inside. It's beautiful. The like I said, the batter recipe is exactly what it tastes like when you get it at the fair. It's a legit one. So I would recommend this recipe. The techniques I said, you know, pouring it evenly. Even though you pour it evenly, like you said, any funnel cakes, or like I said, any funnel cake is not going to turn out looking completely even. But pouring it as even as you can ensures that it will cook all the way through and it will get nice and golden on the outside. And the flavor, the taste is wonderful with the powdered sugar or the cinnamon sugar, and it's the stuff of dreams. Anyway, and with the elephant ears, I know when you get those at the fair, like, they're flat. It's the same batter, but they're like flat and they look like an elephant ear. I don't know how they do that, so I just pour it like a funnel cake and do the sugar cinnamon on it, and that's my version of an elephant ear, and it tastes exactly the same. So I don't know how they do that process with batter, but anyway, that it tastes it's an elephant ear. It tastes exactly like an elephant ear. It just looks like a funnel cake. So anyway, I know we got the quarantine and the fair may or may not be open, who knows. So if you're interested in trying this technique to make funnel cake, the recipe's easy. It's just the technique. Again, don't be discouraged if you don't get it right away. Hopefully the tips on the oil heat and pouring it and making sure the consistency is very important as well. So hopefully all those tips will help you create a delicious cooked through golden funnel cake. And if you give it a try, hope you enjoy.